Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another Hit Save podcast. I'm here with Rik Nicol of Goodboy Galaxy, and you just saw the Goodboy Galaxy trailer that just came out like 2 weeks ago here,
That's right.
the
Yep.
latest one. It's really, really fun. um, Really fun game, first of all. Super cool trailer, and I love the music. So, hi, Rick. Hi, Rik. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Rik from Goodboy Galaxy, and yeah, I'm more on the creative side. And with my friend Jeremy, we've been working on Goodboy Galaxy for the past couple of years.
So, tell me a bit about Goodboy Galaxy. What is it?
So it's a exploration-based platform game. I'm a bit hesitant to call it a Metroidvania because I don't think it really checks all the boxes. Um, but it's kind of in the same vein a little bit. Um, And yeah, it's a platform adventure game for the Game Boy Advance.
So a new game for the Game Boy Advance being made in this year of 2023. What made you think of this? What made you go into making a Game Boy game in 2023, or even a few years earlier?
Yeah. Well, we started it as a game jam project, so it was just a small weekend project, and I think it was for the Ludum Dare or the Ludum Dare um, game jam, and we just wondered could we do it in in such a short time frame, and we just about to the very last hour, which is game jam tradition, did manage to pull off a playable game that had a couple of levels and an end, um, that actually run on the Game Boy Advance, and of course that made us overconfident. So we thought it's easy, we can do this, um, and yeah, there was not much prior thought behind it, but it just felt like a fun thing to do, and it was a fun thing. We really enjoyed doing it, and the Game Boy Advance is just super special to us, so it felt right. And also with the kind of fortuitous, it was the 20th anniversary of the Game Boy Advance just recently, so it kind of lined up with that as well. So everything just kind of seemed in alignment at the time. Um, but there wasn't really a special reason. It was just kind of, we thought it was fun, we thought it was interesting, uh, and we didn't run into any very difficult obstacles that made us give up. So that's the reason, really.
Awesome. So I want to show the picture here is of a GBA running your game. And this is
Yeah.
my favorite form factor of the GBA. I know a lot of people will maybe disagree, but I think this is just a fantastic, iconic handheld console. The the amount of effort that you put into the game, as I was playing the beta release that you sent over to us, thank you so much for providing that. I was just amazed by the animations, the artwork. It's so colorful. It's really, really fun to play. And as you said, exploratory, just exploring the different areas and going back and trying new different things, dying a lot. Um, it's just so much fun. So, how did you how did you get into this? What's your background in game development, and how did you get to where you are right now developing this? Because it's a very
um,
polished game.
Thank you very much. So I guess earlier in my career, I was working in web development and a bit of print design, but I was always doing kind of small freelance things or hobby things, um, mainly pixel art for mobile games and stuff like that. Um, so that was my background, and then a few years ago, 6 years ago, I moved to the Netherlands to work at a mobile game studio called Lucky Cat, um, and that's where I met Jeremy. So we had a few years, a couple of years working together there too. And I think that's really when I developed my skill set a bit more, because we were doing like 40 something prototypes a year. Like it's a crazy amount of projects. So I was just, it was just like non-stop learning. And and that's where I met Jeremy, who's also from England, but we both met in the Netherlands.
Just a
Yeah, I mean,
short jump
that's the
over
back.
the puddle.
Yeah, very short. They're surprisingly similar countries. But yeah, we did a couple of game jams in the weekends, and yeah, this was one of them.
So you said you did about 40 projects a year plus game jams during the weekend.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of innovation, a lot of trying new things.
Yeah, it is kind of it's like it's something that you practice and kind of get good at, but I'm hesitant to call it its own skill, because actually the skill is just it's kind of like just accepting the idea that comes to you and just doing it and not interrogating it too much. And then you discover things along the way. But yeah, that's definitely had a relatively big part in this project coming about.
What were some of the other game jam projects that you tried out but didn't feel like it had legs to stand on its own, such as Goodboy Galaxy?
The one other game jam that I did with Jeremy was it was called Super Bike Strike, and
Super
it was
Bike Strike.
it was kind of like a side-scrolling shoot 'em up, but the interesting thing was you jump from your ship, which is actually a hover bike, and then you'd land on the other person's bike and like punch them off, and then their bike would like fall down and smash into other bikes. So you could have quite a chain reaction, and there was like a bit of a double jump to save you from just immediately falling down. It was that little bit of gameplay, like the bit where you jump and attack,
Hmm.
like is super satisfying when you actually land on the bike that you intend to. Um, but did run into some trouble. It's actually a little bit more difficult than you want it to be, and one of the caveats to the difficulty is the um, the game is actually more difficult the fewer enemies are around, which is actually inverse what you expect. But it also ramps up the challenge in other ways that way, because you've got more people shooting at you, and so it's very difficult to get the balance right. And to get the game feel to good, it had to be quite fast and quite zoomed in, but that also made it more difficult to land where you want. And I think the idea's got legs, but I think it would have to be done maybe in 3D or something to make it a bit more user friendly, I guess. But yeah, that's the previous game jam that we did before Good Boy.
That sounds really cool too. I would love to try that out.
I'll send you a link afterwards.
Fantastic. So, Good Boy Galaxy was thought up as a game jam project during a weekend.
Yep.
How did you go about after the game jam? What was your thought process like? You're like, okay, maybe we should do something here. How did you go about actually doing something? And you ran a Kickstarter. I definitely want to dive into that as well.
Yeah. So we didn't really think about the Kickstarter for quite a long time. We were just working on it a weekend a month or something, just here and there. And then I think it's when COVID hit. everyone was working from home and suddenly had their commute time, and there was there was less to do, so we got more done, and that's when we were getting the demo that ended up in the launching with the Kickstarter. So yeah, we got the demo ready, and then yeah, we just decided to make it a full. At that point, it was quite obvious that it was worth pursuing. But when it was just the game jam version, it was just a little side hobby. It wasn't that interesting. But at the point when the demo was taking shape is when we decided to take it to Kickstarter.
So what was your experience with Kickstarter?
Yeah, so we'd partnered with First Press to
Hmm.
publish the physical copies before we did the Kickstarter, and they'd done a few other Kickstarters before, so we kind of knew a little bit what to expect. So yeah, basically the deal was we had a limited amount that we could sell, and then basically we didn't really have to pay for it. It was kind of like an advance. So that's why it's limited, so that it's it's safe for all parties.
Yeah.
But of course, we blew through the whole thing in the first day, which nobody really expected. And then people were angry about it, and we were kind of unprepared for it, so it was a bit stressful, to be honest. And of course, we're both still working. We kind of wanted, or we kind of expected, it to be a bit of a continuation of a side hobby project. But when you have a Kickstarter that successful, you're kind of responsible to fulfill your biggest promises. So it was yeah, it was kind of a mixed emotions. I was also finding it difficult to sleep with all that going on, so it's like heightening the emotions of the excitement and the stress. But I mean, it was definitely a very overall positive experience, and was definitely super grateful for everyone that's backed the project and given us this opportunity to make the game exactly as we really want to, and not just cutting corners and doing it here and there. So yeah, hopefully they're happy with their decision when they finally get to play the game.
Yeah, what I've seen so far from the game, I definitely think that people are going to be very, very happy with the end result. Again, I am amazed by the animation, the color. It pops. It really, really pops. The music is really solid. So, what is your role within the game, and what's Jeremy's role in the game?
Yeah, so I guess yeah, the trouble is we both do a bit of everything, but
I
from
figured
my
that.
side, yeah, from my side, it's mainly creative stuff, all the art and animation, um, and a lot of the game design, I guess, comes from my side. And then from Jeremy's side, he's like the technical guy. He's set up the project. All the programming is his remit, and making sure it compiles, fixing bugs, tracking down the most esoteric thing that you can possibly imagine in the Game Boy Advance's hardware. But yeah, there's definitely some overlap. Like I've also done a lot of coding myself, like a lot of the fancy effects in the backgrounds and all the quests and stuff. That a lot of that's me. Sometimes it has to be fixed, but yeah. And then music we've both kind of done. Also, Vincent Berger aka Tui, did a lot of the music in the game. But yeah, me and Jeremy both like doing music too, so we've both had a hand in that. And then level design, we've also both done, and we have slightly different philosophies when it comes to level design. So it's Jeremy makes the most clever and cruel Mario Maker levels that you've ever played, and that are very difficult but very clever mechanically. And I've, from my design background and from all the time working on mobile games, I'm like very much got the mindset of like simplification, like making everything smooth. So it's interesting. We work collaboratively on the levels, and we're both making passes over each other's work until eventually we've got something that's, we like to think of it as having our cake and eating it too, because we've got the clever ideas, but hopefully it's there's less frustration. I don't want to sand the corners off completely, but yeah, we've tried to make it so that there's no showstoppers if you get completely stuck. But yeah, that's where we're at.
You mentioned that there are some quirks when it comes to programming for the GBA. What are
Yeah.
some challenges that you have met and overcome, or at least tried to overcome?
Yeah, there's quite, it's a relatively advanced, you'll forgive the pun, console. It's got the feeling like it's a SNES or a Mega Drive or a Genesis, but it's actually it's a lot more powerful. So it's a lot freer than you'd imagine, or you might imagine it would be. But there's still some tight restrictions. Like there's only a finite amount of layers. There's only 4 layers, I think, and you've there's a we work in 4 bits per pixel, I think, which is 15 colors per sprite or per tile. So yeah, there's a lot of clever tricks to try and get the absolute most out of it. Like with the layers, sometimes we split them into sections so that we can scroll one layer at different speeds depending on where it is, to get the feeling of more depth. And constantly running out of so from the art side, I really want to make the levels feel unique and have lots of areas within them that feel not quite set piece, but at least so you know where you are, because you can go through the level in several different ways. It's like important to have landmarks, but that's expensive when you can only have so many tiles in memory. So went through incredible lengths of like automatically figuring out which tiles are similar enough to be collapsed into one tile. We can keep them, we can have flipped and mirrored versions of the tiles don't count as an extra tile. So we've like lots of clever use of that. And like,
That's smart.
yeah, there's so many like really quite arduous tasks that end up just shaving enough off that you can do what you actually wanted to do in the first place, which is super important on the low end consoles. But obviously, when we do the Switch port, which we're just starting now, it's probably, all this stuff is no longer necessary in it. But it was fun. It was fun little puzzles to figure out. So still enjoyed it anyway.
That's awesome. So we've gone quite deep into the technical weeds already. So I want to bring us back up a bit. and talk about the game itself and the story in the game, the characters. So tell us a bit about who you are as a player and what the mission is, the story is.
Okay, so the background of the game, or the overarching story, is that you're this dog named Maxwell, and he's not a dog from Earth. He's a dog from the dog galaxy, obviously. And yeah, his system or his planet is dying or collapsing or in trouble. So being the good boy that he is, he takes it on himself to use his hyperdrive to blast to a whole new system, with no idea if he's going to find anything or find advanced civilization that could help him, or it's a big risk basically. So he goes ahead and does that, and then he has to use every single jump in his at his availability. So now he's completely stranded in this new galaxy, but he has found life, civilization and such. But yeah, so it's his job now to figure out a way home, and also figure out if there's someone that can actually help him in his original mission. Yeah, the reason we did it like this is we wanted to really emphasize exploration and discovery, I guess is the right word. So having Maxwell also be discovering this at the same time as the player made the most sense to us. One of our kind of mantras when deciding and designing the worlds and stuff was the word surprise. So we really wanted there to be unexpected things to find when you're exploring stuff. And the best way we felt to go about that was to make everything unexpected in the sense that it's all alien to you, the player, and also to the character that you're playing as.
The exploration, I mentioned earlier here that I died a lot,
Yeah.
but it doesn't feel punishing. It's more like, yes, I know why I perished here, and because I was doing something that I shouldn't. So then I try again and I die, and I try again and I die, and then eventually I figure out, oh no, wait, this is the way I'm going about this. Um, I really like the quick return, essentially to where you were, so you can try it again. It's a very forgiving gameplay, I would say, even though it's hard at times. It's very forgiving, and it's
Yeah.
super fun. And I I love the interactions between the good boy here, Maxwell, and the characters that he meets, because it's super funny. It's really well written, and I think it's on the second world. You are I don't want to spoil the surprise, but there's you get locked in a little for a bit, and I was not prepared for that at all. I was like, oh wait, this is very different. Okay, and you have to fight your way out. It's really fun, and yeah, I love that as you said, the environment is alien, so you're exploring as well as Maxwell, and just finding things out and learning about the environment. And yeah, it's super fun.
Thank you very much.
So how do you you said you go off the theme of surprise.
Yeah.
So how do you plan for surprises?
um, it's a good question. I think surprise is maybe too strong a word, but it's what we told ourselves, so
I
I'll
like it.
stick with it.
I like it.
Yeah. Um, I think, yeah, how we dealt with this was mainly me and my friend Andreas. Um, so Andreas is a guy that I met in London when I lived there, and he's this super chill dude, and he's super creative. It's kind of like Jake the dog from from Adventure Time. So basically, we'd have these long chats, and Andreas was working on concept art with me, so we were kind of coming up with a lot of these ideas together. I think if I was coming up with everything on my own, I don't know, I couldn't really surprise myself, or I couldn't really have that sense of wonder. So when we were collaborating, it was like super important because I knew what would grab my sense of wonder or my attention, and we'd figure out a way to combine our ideas and workshop things. So yeah, we basically just had just conversations where we're talking about broad ideas and then just going away, sketching things out, um, coming up with random. Sometimes it'd be a visual design, and then we'd like come up with the lore behind it. And sometimes it'd be we had a vague idea of what kind of a character, and then one of us would go and draw it, and then we'd develop it a bit more. But yeah, I think there was a bit of back and forth between us that really that's basically how we got the how we planned for surprise was by surprising each other.
I think that's a really good method. That's it. It seems to have worked really well. I definitely were surprised. The piece that the parts that I've been playing, and yeah, it's just again super fun. So, how did you get into game development? What was it that drove you to start with game development all these years ago?
Yes, I guess I was always kind of interested in it. I grew up with like an 8-bit Atari, and um, yeah, I was always sketching ideas for games and trying my best to program in BASIC, and yeah, it's been something that I've been doing for my whole life basically. So it's really hard to pinpoint a specific moment, but I think um, a lot of those older games, they're kind of um, they they kind of have a alien, otherworldly feel to them
Hmm.
a little bit by accident because they often didn't like it wasn't normal yet to have an artist involved in the game, so it was abstract to the point of absurdity in some cases, and yeah, it felt something separate to real life. Whereas games now, obviously, some of them are very realistic and feel almost like a movie or a dream or something. Whereas some of those older games seemed to be almost like this whole separate thing to reality, and I think that really um, it really affected my imagination, I guess, because it just really made you want to fill in the details and come up with your own other worlds. So yeah, that it's for me, it's almost like it's been there since day one. I've just you know finally gone out on my own and made something that's more my own rather than working for hire on other people's projects. And for Jeremy, I think it's similar. Like he grew up with consoles rather than quite the old man computers that I had. Um, and yeah, he's been, like I said, working on Mario Maker levels
Yep.
and this kind of thing. So for him, I think it's yeah, I think it's a similar thing. It's something that we've kind of grown up with, but just from slightly different perspectives.
So, Goodboy Galaxy is coming out for the Game Boy Advance. You also mentioned Nintendo Switch port. What else will it be on?
There's an Evercade version that's also announced. I think I'm not 100% sure when that one's shipping. I think it might be December. So similar time to the Game Boy Advance version. And then we've got the Switch version and the PC version, which we're doing now. We're trying to add a little extra to that. So we're trying to add some local co-op missions. So yeah, it's going to take a little bit longer, but hopefully not too much longer. The Switch one is a bit of a question mark. I know there's a lot more checks and hoops to jump through, but hopefully we can get the PC one out either the end of the year or sometime early next year. We've also got the option on the PC to release it without the extra stuff and then add it later, which we can't really do that on the Switch because we're doing physical copies, and technically we can do that on the Switch, but I think people really didn't like the idea of having a cartridge that hasn't got all the content on, and it's because it's a niche product. Really, we have to abide by people's people's best wishes on that kind of thing, and it totally makes sense. I think I think that's one of the really cool things about physical is that it's your item, it's your game. So if we only ship it with some of it, it kind of defeats the purpose of it. So yeah, Switch one will take a little bit longer for that reason, but hopefully it's worth the wait. And then yeah, once we've done the port, the PC one and the Switch one will basically be the same code base. So we can also think about other consoles. Yeah, but we don't have any other specific plans. I've got a good friend who is very good at coding for the Dreamcast. So
That's cool.
yeah, so I'm tempted to see if we can twist his arm to make us a Dreamcast port, or at least help us to do that. But it's not on our immediate radar. We've got too much to concentrate on at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you got four different systems that you're releasing for
Yeah,
already.
luckily the Evercade is actually just an emulator of the Game Boy
Oh, right.
Advance version.
Yes,
Yeah,
of
so
course.
it's not really a separate build. I mean, it is, but it's also it's almost the same as the Game Boy Advance one. So that's one really cool thing about making a Game Boy Advance game is they're compact everything in one package, and you can run it in lots of places. Like there's lots of emulators that can run the game no problem. Yeah, I say no problem. Actually, at the moment, one pretty big emulator doesn't like the game, but we've fixed it several times, so we'll fix it again.
Have you looked into the FPGAs as well, like the Mister FPGAs, and running things on the GBA cores there? Is that
Yeah,
something that you're also making sure that works, or is that a
yeah.
later issue?
No, the I've got the analog pocket, and it's a very beautiful machine. I actually find it quite nice to test on. A lot of the time, I can plug it in via USB and make a build, and our game takes like 3 minutes to compile or 6 minutes to compile, depending on if you've cleaned up the project or not. And I can just get it to build straight to the over the USB cable, and then I can just play it immediately once it's finished. So it's super convenient to have a hardware that you can test on like that. And yeah, it's always worked flawlessly on the Analog Pocket. I don't think we ever ran into any specific issues. I think there was maybe one graphical effect that lost one line of pixels on the Analog Pocket, and that's the only difference that I noticed on the entire thing between that and real hardware. But that was fixed too. But yeah, there's another emulation called GPSP,
Mm-hmm.
because it started out as a PSP emulated, PSP emulator, and that one is super lightweight, so it can run on lots of low end hardware. But to do that, I guess they've got some clever approximations and stuff, which sometimes it doesn't agree with some of our code, I guess. But I've got it running perfectly fine on my PSP. But at the moment, I think there's some routine to do with the save. I think it's the save select screen. It just doesn't like it, so we'll have to fix that this week. But yeah, we've fixed the GPSP build because it's important that emulators can play the game well. But we've fixed it several times during development, so we'll just make sure we fix it before we send our final build out on Monday.
Yeah, looking at the homebrew community and especially the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance community, there are a lot of different emulators with various compatibility. So do you try to test them yourselves, or do you have a group of people that are testing for you and helping you out?
Yeah, so we tried to keep abreast of all the various emulators that we can. That's why I've got a PSP and an Analog Pocket and various bits. The Nano, the tiny little GBA emulator. So I've been testing it in various places, but we've also got a very incredible group of beta testers who have been testing it on all sorts of things that I didn't even know you could test it on. And yeah, they found an unbelievable amount of issues and strange edge cases. But yeah, it's super useful to have a bigger group of people testing it, because yeah, they can just find stuff you wouldn't even think to look for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking at Goodboy Galaxy, you have a release slated now for December, and then you got the PC ports and Switch ports and everything as well. What are your plans for it going forward after the release? Do you have any plans to do a sequel, or is there something that you couldn't keep in the game that you would like to do something with?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, we managed to keep almost all of our ideas in the game. Like
That's awesome.
we had some just random ideas, like in the kitchen when we were working together, of like, oh, what if he opens a burger shop and to generate funds or something. And yeah, all this stuff, like all the stuff that you'd think would get chopped away, we managed to get it all in. So on that sense, besides one planet that we did cut out, we got really everything we wanted in the game. But that's not to say that I wouldn't want to do it again and make a whole new galaxy to explore. I'd love to do that, but at the moment I'm just really dying to work on something new. So in between, we'll definitely work on a new project. We've got a few of my old projects that before I learnt the skill of finishing anything, So I've got a few of those that I'd like to resurrect in the meantime that should be faster to make, because A, we've got all the tech that we made for Goodboy, and B, we've got a head start on some of the assets because I made this stuff years ago, and yeah, so we can make something faster than in 2 years time this time, and then while working on that, we can start coming up with the bigger ideas or developing the bigger ideas that we have to work on other projects, and then maybe we'll come back around to Goodboy Galaxy and make a sequel.
I think that sounds like a great idea. Work on something else in between.
Yeah,
See how that goes as well. Yeah, a little palate cleanser.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I think back when we're doing 40 odd prototypes in a year and then doing one game in 2 years, I think there's a happy medium where we can have a few projects on the go, but they're smaller, and or we've got some amount of work that's already been undertaken, so it's not quite the arduous task of Goodboy Galaxy. Yeah, so I think that's what we're thinking at the moment.
you mentioned actually finishing projects. I mean that it's very common to not finish projects. I'm an expert
Yeah,
at not finishing projects myself.
yeah.
So being kind of locked in a physical medium where you have a release and you want to release and you have to do that well in advance, do you feel that that helped you finishing the game, or was it did it make it harder?
Um, I mean, to some degree, it's like, well, the deadline is now. You have to deliver. There's a deliverable. You can't not do that. You can't be in breach of contract. And although technically the Kickstarter is, you're not obligated, like you're not guaranteed the reward. You don't want to upset such a large amount of people. So
Yeah,
it's
definitely not.
also, yeah, exactly. So there's definitely obligations that need to be met, which um, can feel like a burden, but also definitely it is a motivator. Um, but yeah, I think it's just yeah, like I said, it's not really a skill in itself. It's just a mindset to um, not spend all your time coming up with, changing your mind, making differing decisions, and just always keep some momentum going. And then I think even the relatively big projects are achievable, whether it's timely or not. As you know, we underestimated the amount of time it would take by 100%. Like it took us twice as long as we thought, and somehow amongst our peers, that's not even bad. That's okay. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah, just yeah, my advice would always be just keep some momentum, and then it'll get you there. I think a lot of developers say you should make small games, lots of small games, which is kind of what we did when we were working on prototypes, so many prototypes,
Mhm.
to kind of exercise that muscle of momentum. But I think what a lot of developers don't really talk about is it's kind of boring to work on you know small uninteresting projects when there's the great big magnum opus that everyone wants to work on. So um I think really loving what you're doing is also a big motivator. So Yeah, it's not as easy as it sounds when people say just work on 1,000 small projects. I
Yeah.
don't. It's not the only part of the equation.
Yeah, you definitely have need to have the passion for it, because otherwise it's not going to get done.
Yeah,
So looking at you, the studio, the game, as part of the indie gaming community, what are you excited about for the future of indie gaming? We see here a big revival, I think, of uh, retro style and also retro games, but retro style has been in vogue for a good number of years now,
yeah.
and I love it. I'm a big fan of the retro style games. Do you think we'll see more of that, or will we move into a different type of genre?
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that I'm the right person to really say. I'm not really like abreast of all the trends in on the consumer side. I've I really enjoy is just watching what people are making, and just taking it at face value and just enjoying it for what it is. So it's hard for me to like forecast like what the you know industry or the community is going to be doing next. But I think as long as people are making interesting stuff that they personally find interesting, I think that's always going to be where the gems come from. um, and I I think if any particular style like PlayStation 1 horror games or something, which you sometimes uh, they seem to appear in small groups. I don't think, although obviously people are inspired by each other's projects, I don't think anyone's thinking, I want to make a PlayStation 1 horror game just because I've seen, just because, oh, they've proved that there's a market there. I think to make anything in this kind of hobby space, you have to really deep down want to make it. So I think I don't know if how applicable it is to kind of chase trends like it. Um, yeah, I just think they're so personal, which is what I love about the indie game space. That yeah, that's my opinion on it. Anyway, I don't know if that's in spirit of the question.
No, I think
Um,
that's good. I think that's good. I think
yeah, I mean,
we see a lot of passion projects, and
yeah,
you can you can definitely tell when you're playing a game. You can tell that the person who made this game is proud of the game and had fun creating the game.
yeah. I think there's a lot to be unexcited about at the moment in indie gaming, like with Twitter deteriorating and Unity imploding. Um, but in spirit of the question, like in its kind of optimistic um, view, I think it maybe it maybe means there's a bit of a rebirth on the horizon. Like there'll be a new place for community and marketing, and there'll be a new home for the Unity exiles. I really love Blender, so I'm really
Hmm.
hoping that Godot becomes like the Blender of game development software. I think although it's not that much fun for a lot of people at the moment, maybe there's a bright future. Um, and then yeah, I mean in terms of yeah, like I say, what I'm really excited about is just people's personal projects. Like I love just scrolling through Twitter or Blue Sky or X, whatever, and just watching what people are making, and there's some really incredible stuff. There's someone called Kosefi, I think, Chunfai. They're making a they've been making a dungeon crawler game where you also play as a dog. So that's
Ooh.
up. Yeah, that's something that I like, and it's just so. I think they're like mainly a freelance artist, but they're just in their spare time been doing this for years. It's so beautiful. Like it's just every note is just absolute perfect. And every time that comes up on my Twitter feed, I'm just like, it makes my day feel a little bit better. And there's so many projects like that, and I think, yeah, that's what I'm really excited about.
That's really cool. Rik, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for talking to me today and showcasing Goodboy Galaxy, diving into the game, diving into you as a person. This has been really, really fun. Where can we find more information about Goodboy Galaxy, about you, your projects?
Um, so the best way to find the information is just go to our website, which is goodboygalaxy.com, and on that page there's a link to our personal Twitters, and yeah, that's where all the info is.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rik. Again, this has been fantastic. And thank you, everyone who has listened in or watched us. Have a fantastic week and see you all next time. Bye.
Thank you very much.